Hello and welcome to Higher Ground here at TC Media, TC Studios in Olympia, and have a great crew behind the scenes today. Got a great assistant here. Unfortunately, co-host Dr. Heather Taylor Zimmerman wasn't able to make it today, so we'll still talk about some of the things that she and I were going to talk about. And the Raven is going to really be leading the way, fortunately. But what I'd like to do is talk about a little bit of background, a little bit of history. For many, many years, and actually the last 11 years, worked as a counselor and clinician with children, adolescents, and their families, and the children, adolescents having some type of diagnosis, let's say like anxiety, depression, maybe eating challenges, whatever it might be. And it was a home-based program. It still is, still happening. And a lot of times, there would be different modalities that would try to utilize in different ways of here's what the circumstances are, here's what the challenges are that are presented by the individual. And it's not one size fits all. Like our agency was really kind of geared to cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. But I realized kind of quickly that it really depends on the individual, what that person's needs are. And again, we're talking about children and adolescents, so there's already some challenges just with, and obviously maturity of understanding some of what's taking place during the process and during the time that we had a chance to work together. So a lot of those appointments involved going to the home, some of it individually, some with the family, but also out in the community, at schools, helping with IEPs, individualized educational programs, and being able to provide some background information, let's say, around the diagnosis, let's say, and it's really more what I was more concerned with is what are the symptoms, what's going on, what's happening for the individual. So in this whole process, and again with different modalities, and borrowing something here, this what I'm pointing to, the Raven, but you can read what it says here. So somebody else's artwork, and actually the text that's there. So transformation. So as we're working together in a counseling situation, hopefully identifying here's what the challenge is, here's or challenges, and how we're going to go about kind of resolving some of these or working through some of these. So that's part of the transformation, hopefully, that is going to take place. And a lot of times, a lot of this stuff was insurance driven, so they might allow us 3 months. Initially, sometimes we were able to get extensions, but again, that was quite a challenge itself of really being able to, we're just getting to know one another when, okay, we're out of time. But hopefully planting some seeds is what was important to me. So when we are out of the situation, that hopefully that individual, the family, can still utilize what it is that we talked about. So again, referring to transformation. Hopefully there's a transformation from that first visit and those first visits to when we do complete services. And I try to extend as much as I could if necessary and when necessary. Again, we're talking about children and adolescents. So something that I learned over the years is physically we're going to get to a certain point, let's say, full growth, but it's the frontal lobe of the brain that really is executive functions, making choices, decisions, and as we know, and we've lived it, we see it in families that where, especially for teens, that's one of the biggest challenges is making proper decisions, making proper choices, and that takes some time. That's kind of like the last thing that really develops, because the person could be 6'2" or 5'5", whatever it is, but and physically at a peak, but it's that frontal lobe piece that is also important. So, all of these things kind of bringing into the picture as we're talking about where we're starting, what the goals are, what the person would like to achieve, or the parents, and again in the school, and moving forward. So in this whole process, it's going to be really a transformation that is going to take place. And as you can see with Raven here, is healing. So hopefully during this process too, there's going to be some healing for the individual. There's going to be some healing for the family. Could be with parents, could be siblings, whatever the case might be. But hopefully the healing process is taking place throughout this whole time. And as mentioned, hopefully what we're going to be doing is kind of moving through those goals, those challenges, and at the conclusion, hopefully having something that they can, the individual can take away from that experience. Again, planting the seeds where they can nurture those seeds. Again, a lot of different ways of going about that. Another word that's up here that you see is magic. And many different connotations, I'm sure, of what is magic. And in this case, would say, hopefully it's the dynamics that are taking place, that are happening throughout the process, throughout that those times that we are meeting, the time that we spend together, is hopefully there's some magic taking place that lends itself to the healing. And of course, that also lends itself to the transformation. So hopefully, from what we saw at the beginning of the process, that first appointment or two, we're going to see that transformation happening, taking place, and it'll be through the healing and through magic. And if we go to another shot here, is as you open this card, so really what I would share with a lot of individuals too is a lot of what's taking place, a lot of what you're going to need is already here. That's already here. What we're going to be doing is exploring ways of bringing that out, of discovering, self-discovery of what are those talents, what are those skills, what is it that you feel that you're able to do. And I'd say a lot of times, more often than not, the first thing that I would really notice is a person's lack of self-esteem, and just the self-worth, not thinking I'm not able to do anything, where it's just the opposite as we're working through our appointments. And I'm kind of chuckling here because a lot of times I would bring some materials with me, different kinds of art stuff. And I know sometimes parents would get a little frustrated because the individual, young girl, young guy, they're working on the art and said, look at him and, pay attention. And I realized that they're paying attention because I could say, they're working on something, maybe sketching, maybe some painting. And I'd ask, so what is it that we were just talking about? And they were able to repeat that. So that wasn't so much an issue, but I think this artwork is what would be helpful to kind of break the ice. And it's tough to have that eye contact sometimes and for a long period of time, but if we can have something else taking place here, and a lot of times we talk about that artwork, or I'd ask, let's say if it's anxiety and whatever the circumstance or whatever the trigger was of bringing up that anxiety, is that something, or if you could, kind of draw something that would speak to that, when you're actually feeling it, what does that look like if you can do that on paper? So a lot of times that would be really helpful, is not expecting the individual to be able to verbalize that all the time. Sometimes it was through the artwork that we were able to do. The person was able to do. So that was a great vehicle, and Heather is really, really good as an artist and as a therapist herself of being able to tune into that piece of it. You know, I don't consider myself an artist, but I could see the value of the artwork just being tremendous. Again, it's another way, a release, if you would, another outlet to kind of look at what the circumstances are, what the challenges are, what the things that are going well, whatever it might be. So we're able to do that sometimes with the artwork, because I would ask, you know, once it's done, so can you tell me what you have right here? You know, what you drew, what were you thinking about? So again, it's just a nice way to kind of bring out the things that are taking place, what the person might be feeling, what they're thinking, and then those two things usually would have some influence and result in the behaviors. So a lot of times that's why we're there. There were behaviors that were maybe not what parents wanted to see, not what the teachers wanted to see, not what the individual wants to see, or siblings, but it's how can we make some changes with that. So quite an interesting process. So looking at different kinds of modalities, how can we get to those things that works for the individual? And again, through the transformation piece, you know, we're going to explore what fits, what allows you to explore this, what allows you for us to be able to communicate. And not so much for us, it's then to be able to, how are you going to do this in the classroom? You know, the things that we're able to do right here. And small groups was another aspect that was just dynamic to watch other individuals in the group, everybody having some kind of challenge, some kind of diagnosis, but being able to put their things aside and be able to speak to whatever the individual who's talking and sharing is able to do. You know, and all this is obviously, it was confidential within the group itself, just like the one-on-one piece, the family aspects. So try to have that person be as comfortable as possible, feel as comfortable as possible of sharing, because that's not always a big thing. Most of us probably recognize the same thing. It's not always easy for me to share things with other people, but somewhere in there I know I need to do that. So how can I get there? So something that kind of pull here too is with the indigenous, and I'm going to just hold up book here. I don't know who. Okay, yeah. So, and it's spirit healing, and part of this is for the indigenous, looking at different kinds of spirits. So animal spirits, bird spirits. So the raven here. Also, let's say eagle, it could be blue heron, whatever it is, but those spirits right there. And then where the healing aspect takes place. So again, it's incorporating some different kinds of ways to approach whatever the circumstances are, whatever the challenges are. And again, what's going to fit for the person who is experiencing those things? That's what we're looking for. How can we figure those things out? So I brought a couple of other examples because Raven really resonates for me. So here's one, and it's kind of tough to see, but it's folded paper, the bird itself, the raven itself, and just incredible. The work that it must have taken, like origami, to do this right here. So this came from an artist in Albuquerque. Just again, tremendous work right there. And then have another one right here too, also raven. And this one just is so cool to me. It's what a shot. So photograph here and capturing raven. It's kind of like, so what's going on? You know, you can kind of see, at least that was the hit I get with the expression of raven here. So again, that energy, the spirit of asking the individual that we're working with, and what resonates for them. As far as maybe it might be animals, I had coworkers who had pets, let's say, like in using pet therapy. Just again another way of how can we kind of bridge this gap. We only have a short period of time. How can we get right to what we really need to be addressing in as short a period of time as we can? So it's what's the door that's going to, how can we open that? What's it going to take to do that? So, again, we've got some different, in this case, it's a raven spirit, if you would. So it's been an incredible process, and I know I'm talking more about because it's been the last part of the work that I've been doing, but for many years worked with adults in a counseling situation, not so much with this aspect right here. It was really more workers' comp, people that had job-related disabilities or injuries, and trying to get back to either what they were doing, sometimes needed to be modified, or something new. So it was in that new part to start exploring, what your interests are, what your abilities are, what your skills are, and that was pretty fascinating in itself. But I noticed, and let's say did that for like 26 years, but when I started working with children, because I had been in some different schools, that was where I kind of saw for myself things just really take off. I thought, well, I kind of already did my career with the other piece, but this was a whole different ballgame, and I didn't know, time-wise, how much longer I was going to do whatever I was doing, still doing it actually today, and in different situations. But again, working with children, adolescents, and with their families, because a lot of times what would happen too, kind of jumping back to that, is a lot of these circumstances are hereditary. So the parents, or one of the parents, might be experiencing similar kinds of things: the depression, anxiety, being bipolar, whatever it might be. So it's kind of like this is the environment, and hopefully where there are some survival skills, if you would, some skills that can leave or discover and explore for the individual, for the family. So hopefully there's just a little more openness that takes place in the family unit, and actually again taking these things to the classroom, where other circumstances could be taking place there for the individual. And it's just an incredible process. We might see it as, it's challenges, or these are challenges that are not going to be possible to overcome, not going to be possible to really to deal with. But in reality, it's anything but that. And I would hope that any one of us, not having to be in a counseling situation, of course, we're exploring ourselves, aren't we? We're growing, hopefully, and we're just whatever it is that will allow us to get there. Hopefully, that's what we're exploring. So, I really appreciate being here today, being able to do this. Again, this studio is just incredible. If it wasn't for TC Media, we wouldn't be doing this show right now. So thank you very much again for the crew behind us. And I will close and see you the next show. Thank you. Hello and welcome to Higher Ground here at TC TV, TC Media, TC TV Studios in Olympia, Washington, and try to offer this and say thank you each time that we do a show. typically it's with another guest or a couple of guests, but today going to be a solo. But this is just tremendous for public access television. Great opportunity for anybody in the community to have your own show. And I mean, this is just incredible. What you're seeing here, you're going to kind of see a little bit of the behind the scenes part, and that's where things really happen with the crew who's here, sometimes with the cameras, definitely in the control room, so sound, graphics, director, and the equipment is just state of the art. So it's what a treat. And we get a chance to do that whenever. Sign up, and the excellent training, lots of different kinds of topics. So if you're interested, or just come in, take a look sometime, check it out, see what you think. And definitely encourage you to, like I said, if you want to do your own show, it can be a solo, you can have other people, could be family, friends, whoever you would like to have this done with. So again, welcome. What I'd like to do is, this is part 2. Part 1 we did about a week ago, and just a quick recap. And as you can see, it was about Raven. So there are a lot of different cultures and indigenous cultures in this country, and actually elsewhere throughout the world, using animal spirits and bird spirits. So animal could be buffalo, tatanka, could be deer, could be whatever animal, elk, and then bird spirit. And in this case, I've got raven today. It could be crows, it could be egret, heron, hawks, eagles, but today kind of relying on Raven here to kind of help me along the way. And personally, Raven has always been, I don't know, just really significant. But I came across this card right here. So it's transformation, healing, magic. And then tied that into, as you may have seen, or if you haven't, you might want to check out part 1, in a counseling situation of what this means, how it all comes together. So we'll work that in as the show is going on. And today, for part 2, what I'd like to talk to you about called the 3 R's. So some of us, especially the old timers, might remember that as from school-related kind of thing: reading, writing, arithmetic. Dropping the W, dropping the A from arithmetic. And then I started at this agency in Rhode Island, working with children, adolescents and their families, and then pretty much where that child or that adolescent, like school, sometimes it was the legal system, sometimes the medical situation, but we did home-based services. So the very first visit, the initial visit, would go in and really, I would ask the individual, the client, the youth, so why do you think we're here? And hopefully parents are there, or at least one of the parents. So kind of get an idea. And we have reports that, what I tried to do is not read those right away. I want to really hear from you. What is it that, why do you think we're here? And a lot of times children or an adolescent would say, well, it's because my parents wanted me to do this. It's not that I really want to do this necessarily, but I said, well, I get that, and thank you. That's helpful. But hopefully we're going to be spending some time together, and usually that might be, say, 6 hours a week, and try to spread that out. So it might be 2 or 3 times a week for an hour or so, and try not to put too much of this on the youth, because it can be a little overwhelming unless they've been in a counseling situation before. So first thing we talk about really is confidentiality, that whatever we talk about, whether it's right here at your home, or we're out and about, just the 2 of us, or we're in a small group setting, whatever it is whatever we talk about is maintaining confidentiality. So unless you give me permission, I'm not going to share any of this with anyone else, like your parents or friends or anybody, unless you give me permission, as I mentioned. And the only other time that would not be the case is if you were going to, and it would be explaining this, is if you're going to harm yourself, you're going to harm somebody else, or somebody's going to harm you. then I need to make that information available to, say, social services. But I would let you know that, and I'd let your parents know that before that kind of call would be made. But again, just trying to lay some of the groundwork of what this is all about, and really talking about, we've got 3 or 4 months, and it sounds like a long time, but it's really not sometimes. It's going to take some time just for us to get to know one another. So building a relationship as quickly as we can is going to be very important, as you will see if you don't already have already experienced that. And usually with relationship building, it's trust. So to try to gain your trust as quickly as possible, same thing with your parents. And we're going to be, if it's okay with you, it's okay with your parents, is to also connect with your school. So the school nurse, teachers, could be counselor, social worker, and it's just wherever you are is to help you work through whatever the challenges are that you're having right now. So there's usually some kind of diagnosis that's involved, and that's what brings in the insurance company. So it could be, and a lot of times see this, unfortunately, was anxiety, depression, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, and actually I'd like to change that word disorder to, say, disruption, just something that's a little softer. But basically that's whatever the circumstances are. And it's really more around the behaviors, that maybe there's something that is being disruptive here at home, or it could be out in the community, could be at school. And really what we're going to be talking about is learning more about yourself. And that's where the 3 R's come into play. So the reading, writing, arithmetic, that's just kind of like the start. But going into alternative schools that the agency had, up on the walls they'd have these sheets of paper, and it would say, respect yourself, respect others, and respect property. And before we really start talking about that today, because this is our first visit, I really also want to ask you, if you have any goals, or is there anything that in particular that you would like to make some changes? We're going to be also talking about, what are you good at? What do you think your strengths are? So that also is going to be a part of this. Somewhere along the way, and not too far after, kind of starting with the agency and using those 3 R's, because I thought that was really helpful. Again, a 3 or 4 month period. What I'm trying to do is plant some seeds, and one of those seeds, to try to keep it as simple as possible, would be the 3 R's. And we would talk about that at different times. So the respect aspect. And I would say, if you can respect yourself, you can do that first one. Usually the other 2 are going to take care of themselves. To respect others, respect property. Because just think about that, you want to be respected yourself. So hopefully you're not going to be dissing somebody else or whatever it might be for the other person, or certainly with the property, that kind of thing. So somewhere in here too, what I realized, and it was really kind of coming upon something in Oklahoma, going through Oklahoma City. I saw this billboard, and it said, reflect, respect, remember. And I still had quite a ways to go, so I started thinking about that, is how can I incorporate this, or kind of, it's a modality. So what you see right here, transformation, healing, magic is a modality. Cognitive behavioral therapy, which the agency really emphasized, evidence-based, it's a modality. The 3 R's become a modality, or for me, that was the case. And it's really what's going to meet your needs is what we're going to be talking about. Not so much, okay, here's what this evidence-based stuff is all about necessarily. It's what's going to work for you. So kind of going back to the reflect, the respect, and remember, the reflection part was all around, again, why am I here? It sounds like something's going on, some behaviors that are taking place. It could just be for yourself, of maybe things just aren't going the way you would like to have them. So kind of reflecting, thinking about, in a sense, you're doing inventory, you're doing a self-assessment. What do I want to change? And then sometimes this could be a little difficult, because a lot of times I've noticed with children and adolescents, self-esteem wasn't very well established. So there's some struggles with that. So to really try to figure out, what am I good at? What are my strengths? And once we start talking about some things, usually, okay, yeah, I get that. Maybe like I like to play video games and I'm good at that. Or I like to talk to other people, like to help. That's a strength. I'm good at math, or so it could be a variety of things. And really what we're going to be trying to do is it's going to be the exploration that is going to be taking place. And I'm going to go back to right to the Raven again. And actually, there's the inside of this card is really what it mentions is all that you need, you already possess. So how does that work in the counseling situation? Again, looking at what are my strengths? We're going to be exploring who you are. And hopefully that is going to be a pretty cool journey for you. It's probably not going to happen just like that, and it's not going to happen necessarily over the period of time that we're working together, but we're going to really be looking at that in so many different ways. In fact, right here, and I do this, it's this studio. We used to have a show in this studio. That's how I got introduced to public access. But it was the teenagers that did the show. They were behind the camera. They were directing. They were doing the graphics. And I could see as soon as they walked in the door, if it was anxiety, depression, whatever the diagnosis, whatever the symptoms, which is probably the more important part to me, not so much the diagnosis, but the symptoms, they would leave that at the door. There would be teamwork that's going to take place, just like it's taking place right now. In order for us to do this show, people behind the scenes are working together to make this happen. So with the teens, that would be the case. And what I saw was, we didn't have to talk about it, but you could see it was the self-esteem aspect. I got this, I can do this. And many times, I don't know what we did, like 70 shows. There was something called PEG Awards, so Public Education Government. And our group was finalists several times, didn't actually take one of those homes, and it wasn't about that. It was more that we got a chance to put these shows together. And a lot of times what would really encourage is, again, the teens are behind the scenes, but to have somebody up here and we would share whatever the topic might be. And sometimes if they were open to that, really talk about what their struggles might be, as well as here's how I'm working through things. So it's just a really cool way to go as far as the utilizing, again, public access. And this was through a foster dad in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, who was already involved with some things and invited us. So sure, and then once we did, like I said, whatever, so many shows later, and that took several years to actually do that many shows, but it was a cool experience. So kind of going back to fostering self-esteem over a period of time, and we would kind of check back in later, but I'll get to that in just a moment. So that's the reflection part, or reflect. The second one is really built on the first thing that I was talking about, not the reading, writing, arithmetic, but respect yourself, respect others, and respect property. And what kind of also fashioned or added to that is to respect nature. And we hear so much now about climate control. I mean, it's here. It's just we've got kind of a mess, right? So it's property, yes, absolutely. In fact, just another little aside, these cameras that are here, at least at that time, some of these were like $20,000, and the equipment in the back room, soundboard, and all those kinds of very expensive equipment. Never in any of those times did we have any incident of somebody misusing the equipment or breaking things, whatever it was. Again, when they walked in the door, it's kind of like this self-pride piece popped in there, and teamwork of, I'm not going to be the one to let the team down as we're doing the show. So going back to the respect yourself, respect others, respect property, or Mother Nature. So we're working through this during these 3 or 4 months that we're working together. Sometimes I would ask for an extension if we needed that. And then toward the end of the time that was allotted to us, and that's really the insurance company doing that, was we would talk about that last part, remember. So again, let's kind of step back and what was it that, where do we start? If you remember that first visit, asking, so why am I here? What are we doing? What is it that you would like to do? And that piece of it. So it's kind of reflecting and remembering where it was, and then kind of like taking, okay, right here and right now, at this point, 3 or 4 months later, doing that self-assessment, how do you feel where you're at this point? And there could be some enormous changes, and some of it might be, I'm still struggling, but at least hopefully the struggle is not quite as intense as it was when we first got things started here. And a piece of this was, and especially in the remembering part, and it's throughout this whole process, used to do small groups, so maybe 6, 8 teens in the group, had coworkers who enjoyed working with the younger children, so they had some groups too, but I really focused more on teens, it seemed. But it was cool to see the dynamics. And again, the confidentiality, we would talk about that. Actually, I would ask at the beginning, we might be doing an 8-week group. And what is it that you'd like to talk about? What is it that you'd like to do? And a lot of times, especially at that time, and I don't think it's really changed, one of the first things that came out was cyberbullying. So, that was pretty significant. And, again, kind of old school stuff, if you would, not that it has to be old school, but usually with bullying, you would see the person, either face to face or, somewhere throughout your travels, as you were being bullied. What was really frustrating here is the cyberbullying, you don't see who's attacking you, who's posting stuff that, it's like you don't have any control. So that would be maybe one of the things that we start talking about. And it was just amazing. Again, everybody in the room has some kind of diagnosis, some kind of challenge or challenges. And to see them, and we would talk about this, is to step out of your own feeling of anxiousness and anxiety, what that was all about, and be able to really listen to somebody who's in the group talking about, here's what's going on with me, and be able to offer whatever it might be, assistance in some ways. Sometimes it was just about listening. So it was cool to see those dynamics of people, and we would talk about that too, is do you see what happened here today for everybody, where you're kind of able to put your needs aside and then really speak to whoever it is that whoever's in the group. And again, the confidentiality part, very important. Your parents, your friends might be asking, so what'd you talk about? And you can kind of generalize, but you don't have to get into any specifics. And what that created too is that relationship, and relationships of course, and the trust that would also happen while we were in that group setting. And that really varied too. I'd bring a lot of different kinds of art stuff. So teens are, as we're talking about different kinds of whatever it might be, doing some kind of art, painting, sketching. One point I brought in a door, like a regular door, that had, say 12 glass panes, not too big. And especially with kids that are on the spectrum, autism spectrum, and maybe in this case it's about Asperger's. So really shy, not really wanting to socialize, that kind of thing. But I mean, the door is only so big, and would have a couple of people work on the door. So painting the door, and whatever it is that you would want to paint and create, you choose the spot that you want to do something. But again, working together, and that again was just amazing to see how. I think it was because you're creating some art that kind of forget about. Well, I don't like being too close to somebody, or I'd rather do this by myself, whatever the issue might be or the case might be. So it was really cool to see how, again, the group working together. And as they're doing that, let's say 1 or 2 people, the rest of the group is working on some other stuff. So the artwork, again, very, very helpful and important of relaxing as we're talking about some stuff that that's not really comfortable for many people, let alone teens or let alone children, of sharing some things. But again, hopefully that building the relationships, building the trust, that seemed to really help alleviate, let's kind of just go for it and would see this is working. So another aspect of this was, okay, so you're struggling at home, you might be struggling at school, wherever it might be. Sometimes there were legal issues that might be taking place, whatever, again, the case might be. But it's really, you're kind of addressing those things now. And a lot of times would talk about, and this all kind of rolls into, it's all part of those 3 R's, the reflect, respect, remember, is, you're really, this is an opportunity. If you can look at it that way, it's just a matter of perspective sometimes. And again, that's not easy. It's easier said than done. But learning to deal with things that come up in the challenges that you have, and you're doing it at this age right here, whatever that might be, that's going to pay some dividends later, because you're going to see things get a lot of times more complicated. That's how life can be sometimes. Not for everybody necessarily, but usually we're going to have that. So it's kind of like, if you can see this as an opportunity. So again, those would be things that we would talk about individually. We would talk about that as the family is concerned, because that environment is critical, isn't it? Is we can talk about these kind of like survival skills, or planting the seeds of when we've culminated, when we've ended the services, of hopefully you taking some of what we've talked about and continuing to build on that. So in the family environment, there have to be some changes there too, right? And sometimes that didn't happen. So it was, again, another challenge for the individual, for the teen or for the child to, boy, I'm going to need some help. So that's where sometimes with the school aspect, school nurse was always just a critical person, distributing meds, because almost all the time, no matter what the diagnosis was, there was some kind of medication involved. We didn't prescribe that. Either one of our psychiatrists or the nurse practitioners or somebody out in the community, maybe a GP, general practitioner, perhaps, but somebody was. So as a clinician, counselor, we're not doing that. We're going to help monitor, are you taking your meds, that sort of thing. But it's coming up with other ways, other means, and different kinds of modalities, different ways of how can you move from what this challenge is or what these challenges are to something that is more agreeable to you or that you feel better about. Again, not it's easier said than done, but that was part of the process. And the thing that was helpful 2 to 3 times a week, as mentioned, that can be overwhelming for youth at times, but actually what it also provided was consistency. The fact that we would set appointments that would show up, actually, it's kind of like also being a role model was what we also kind of saw. And for them to take that same idea of being a role model within the family, so it could be with younger siblings, could be, it's not like you're going to tell your parents what to do, but maybe to kind of work through things in a way that is, it's amenable for everybody. It works for everybody. And then in school, so it could be with your co-students or friends at school, and it could be sometimes with let's say the lower grades, depending on what grade you were in. So it was another cool way of building that self-esteem, building that self-worth of stepping out of my own circumstances and being able to help somebody else, whatever it could be. And let's just say, there was another issue that would come up as conflict resolution. So how do we resolve something without having to get into a fight? So again, the team might be able to share that with even other students in their own class, or again with the younger folks. And sometimes that might be something that we might bring up as a topic for when we did our show, which was called C Crew. The C was for, at that time, that in Rhode Island, it was Cox Communications. So anyway, it was just a real cool way to get some messages out, and would always say, if it's just one youth that watches what we do and gains from that, it's well worth everything that we've done, and it was certainly worth that anyway. Just again to see the teens come into the studio, and they were running the show. You know, obviously we were there for some assistance if it was needed, but it was kind of cool once got the training, and that was awesome too. Of the site provided the training and utilizing that. So it's kind of like coming in the door, going right to whatever your station is, or you know, if you wanted to mix it up, that was okay too. So it was, again, just a really cool way to, again, build that self-esteem, which was very, very important. I've got a couple of things here today, kind of going back to, and showed this last time. So with Raven is, in this case, is an artist in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you may or may not see the texture of the bird itself, but it's like origami. It's just multiple folds of the paper, what was used here, and then, I mean, it's just an incredible work of art that somebody has done here. And it just seems, like you said, I just have this affinity for Raven, and would come up with, or wherever I see out in the community, or let's say it could be at museums, could be at gift stores. This is another one just recently, looking at this card for somebody, and it's Raven in the winter. So this is, again, just, it's amazing. I'm just always so appreciate, don't consider myself an artist, I like to do photography, but this type of artwork, and like what we see right here, you know, it's just incredible. And again, kind of bringing this into what we're talking about when we're working together. Another piece, and this is a little different version of it, one more time, is so spirit healing. So a lot would depend on where the individual is, you know, what they're open to, and this would be with several discussions, especially initially, of, you know, what they might be open to. Again, for example, I mean, a lot of times when there's an emergency, EMT, nurse, whoever it might be, a lot of times what are they saying to the individual, the injured person, is take some deep breaths, right? So learning more and more about that is, so the vagus nerve runs along the spinal column, and I'm sharing this with the client or with the youth, as well as with the family. So a lot of times, if you're feeling anxious, you're feeling depressed, whatever the case might be, whatever's coming at you, is to do some deep breathing. So what does that actually do? So the vagus nerve, again, running along the spinal column, the deep breaths activate that nerve, and that's what calms us. So in those emergency situations, EMT, nurse, that's whether they're actually telling the patient that, is, you know, it provides a calming effect. So hopefully that's going to help with, okay, then treating whatever the circumstances might be, as far as why we're there in the first place, the emergency team. But any situation, at any time of the day, of the deep breathing, very, very important. So breath work, that's something we would share throughout the time that we would be spending together, again, to try to alleviate those anxious moments. Another piece of this, when I kind of going back to kind of seeing where the individual is at any given time, what are they open to, you know, that we can start talking about meditation, for example. So I learned something a long time ago from Betty Bethards about a 20-minute meditation. There are all kinds of different meditations. It would be sitting in a chair like this, so back upright, you're listening to some music. So we would be talking about that if the individual is receptive to this. And another piece to this is right away is starting that pattern of deep breathing. So, you know, you're calming yourself. Hopefully you're listening to something, and Betty would talk about, you know, not heavy metal stuff, but it's whatever appeals to you. It's mainly you're trying to still the mind, is to focus. And sometimes it's the words or the lyrics of a song. That's what would help do that. In 20 minutes, that's not too bad. And what that would do then is it would take care of the other 23 hours and 40 minutes of the day. So it's a 24-hour boost, if you would, with the meditation. And a lot of times what we would do, I don't have those with me here, but especially in group, is we would do a 10-minute meditation. It would say, okay, so we have this energy field, again, with the spinal column, electromagnetic energy running through the spinal column. So we have an aura that we produce. Let's say it's kind of like a bubble safe zone for us. And depending on how you're feeling, would have some influence about where that aura is. So again, Betty had some coat hangers, so it's metal, and basically we would have two of those, walk toward the person, and you could measure as these would open up, depending on how out here the aura was, or that energy field. And people would always say, nah, I'm doing this, because I'd be holding these things. So, okay, well, I'll give you the coat hangers and let you just the way you're feeling right now, whoever it is, whoever would volunteer. And they would say, well, what would happen is that energy field, the electromagnetic energy, would push these coat hangers open. And usually that might be, say, and I would explain this as 12 inches, if things are going pretty good. But what we would do is kind of like another step is, now think about a sad time, whatever that might be, and then walk up to that person. You're almost right to them before these things even move. So you see that the energy is very, very low, and definitely don't want to leave somebody in that kind of situation. So, okay, step back, and then now think about a happy moment. And sometimes, and I'm doing this because I'm looking at this camera right here, and you might be 20 feet away, sometimes just taking a step and these coat hangers open up, whereas I'm getting closer, they open up. But just by that energy right there, that what we've done, and it's coming back to the meditation. We do a 10-minute meditation, and let's measure these things, so you get a chance to see that. And it was, it's kind of like, here's a way that you can actually really do measure that, whatever that aura is. So very important, again, because it's involving the deep breathing that is just critical for, again, youth trying to get on solid ground, deal with the challenges, work with the challenges that they have, again, at home, at school, out in the community, whatever it might be. And here are some ways, again, some means of here's how I can work through these things, how I can deal with some of these things. So it was kind of going back to the, as we're, again, working, the respecting, the remembering part is, and would ask, are you doing the meditation? It's again, pretty straightforward, pretty easy, and to be consistent, like so many other things for so many of us, not just youth, that can be a challenge in itself. But doing it consistently definitely would see the benefits. So there are a lot of different ways, different, again, modalities. It's not one size fits all, and certainly would try to be sensitive to that, is what is going to be helpful, what's going to be working for that individual, and then really for the family. And a lot of times what we see is with diagnoses with anxiety, depression, it is actually hereditary. So one or both parents might be experiencing some of that themselves. A lot of times what might see too is grandparents who are raising their children's children, their grandchildren, in other words. So, it's some really interesting, difficult circumstances, but that family work was very important. The individual work certainly was. And again, I thought what I saw, especially for teens, as being probably the most effective was the small groups piece. So it's, again, in that situation, just like it would be individually, same thing it would be in the family part, is we're doing this now. You're doing what you are doing right now. working together, doing the teamwork. So how can you take that to the classroom? How can you take that to the community? How can you take that home and still try to incorporate the same? It's not different personality, so it's not going to be exactly the same. But what it really would do is allow that individual is, I'm not going to just use that right here, and because this is kind of a safe environment. It's just the two of us, or sometimes with the group. But it would actually be more folks involved. So hopefully there's where you see the growth taking place. And coming back to what I have right here too, again, what I hope is taking place during this 3-4 months, and if we get to do extensions, and sometimes the person might be, we close services a month later, they need services again, but it's the transformation. Has there been transformation? Have there been changes within you, the individual, with you, the family, and let's say in a school situation, have there been some changes? So the transformation would certainly be toward the end, kind of asking, again, doing the inventory, doing the self-assessment, and in the process of getting to that transformation, it's a healing process, as we're kind of like the stepping stones that get us to that point where, yeah, I can see the changes I've made. I'm not quite in the same situation as I was when you first came here, or and it's not, I'm not taking credit for any of this stuff. It's really the individual who's making the effort and doing the work, so to speak. And sometimes, and more often than not, and there are different connotations of magic. It's not so much the hocus pocus kinds of things, but it's kind of that the alchemy of working together, and there's some magic there, like the small group aspect where somebody's able to step outside of their own circumstance, their own disruption, and offer, here's what works for me, and here's the stuff that I just fall on my face all the time. It's the sharing part. So there's magic that's taking place, if you would, and these things really influence and can influence the transformation piece of it. And of course, by the time the 3 or 4 months is up, the insurance company wants to say healed, cured, whatever it was, and it was just kind of ridiculous, unfortunately. But hopefully, again, what we have been talking about for that period of time, establishing those relationships, hopefully the healing process taking place, is to take some of these things forward, continue to explore the self, explore others, and continue to grow. And hopefully there won't be need for coming back together down the road. And it didn't happen very often, but where the agency was kind of a small community, and there would be times, especially if it was in that community, but we would cover the state of Rhode Island, which really isn't big, but still a lot of folks, different communities. But within this other community is, you would see somebody on the street, and young adult at this point, and they'd recognize you and come up and say, it's the stuff that we talked about, the stuff that we did has really helped. So it's always cool to see. And I said, you're the one who did this. Actually, you and the things that you learned about yourself of if you need assistance, you ask for it, whatever it is, or if you could do it, whatever the circumstances were. It's really not trying to take credit. It's really to put that credit back where it belonged. It was with the individual, but it was cool to see those kinds of things happen sometimes. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and I really appreciate your hanging in there with me and keeping a couple of things in mind: the transformation, healing, and magic, and the 3 R's. And it's that last version of the 3 R's. So reflect, respect, remember. And hopefully somewhere in here, as you're thinking about that and really remembering the process that has taken place, what helped me get from A to B, work through the challenges, what it might be. If I need kind of like a refresher, there are ways of doing that. I'd always leave a card, of course, and call me anytime, sort of thing. And especially if there were those other emergent situations where, if we're thinking about self-harm of any kind, to be able to reach out and to hopefully learn to do that in this process. So Again, really thank you for tuning in, and definitely for the group that is behind the scenes here today at TC Media. Olympia, come on over here, and this, I don't know about you, but to be able to do your own show, I really enjoy this. This is quite different, doing the solo, because usually Heather Taylor Zimmerman is here, or some other guests. Yes, and it, like I said, it can be just about any kind of way you want to have a show, but the crew here will definitely take care of you with the educational part, the equipment, the assistance, and the patience is just amazing that they have and show. So thank you again, and tune in next time. Have a good day.